Hi, I'm Kelly Wenzel. Thank you for joining us for today's live stream. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Andela. Pleased to be your host for today's discussion. I'm going to be joined by Alicia Mokwa, who is Talent Research Director and IDC Analyst. And what we're here to talk about today is really the struggles that surround tech hiring and maybe some approaches that can make it a little bit easier. Alicia, thank you for joining me. I would love if you could just give a quick intro of yourself to the audience, a little bit of bio and background.
Sure, it's nice to see you, Kelly. Thank you for having me. My name is Alicia, and I have been with IDC as an industry analyst, and I represent the talent acquisition industry most of all. I've been in HCM for about 30-ish years, and I've helped multiple organizations, large and small, manipulate their way through the talent acquisition space, both on the software and solution solving aspects. And I've been with companies like Oracle, ADP, and PwC, and I also owned my own recruiting consulting industry.
So just a few name brands, and then you've seen it from both sides of the spectrum. So I'm super excited to dive in with you today. So before we jump into the discussion, let me just cover a bit of housekeeping, guys. We're live streaming this conversation. We are welcoming guests from all over the world, as is typical with Andela. So please meet, greet, shout out your peers and other viewers in the audience. And as always, drop any questions you have in the chat. We'll try to get to them throughout the discussion and also try to answer questions as we go. Yes, a recording of this session will be made available on LinkedIn and YouTube after the conversation. And finally, if you want to learn more about Andela, you can go to andela.com resources and learn more about us and what we do. And because I know we typically on these webinar discussions do get some people who don't know Andela that well, I am going to start with a lightning speed background about who Andela is and what we do. So we were started a decade ago around a very simple premise, which is the mission. Our mission was recognizing that brilliance was evenly distributed around the globe, but opportunity was not. And we set about building a marketplace to connect brilliant technologists with opportunity. And to do that, we have curated a talent marketplace of technologists that's 150,000 strong in over 135 countries, emphasis on emerging geographies like Africa and Latin America, where 60% of our talent is based. And we built a talent cloud, a technology platform that essentially is tasked with automating and streamlining that process of identifying and matching talent with those opportunities. And what we're here to talk about today is what does that enable? All of that is in service of this new approach called adaptive hiring. So Alicia, I guess I would start there to say, could you give us a little bit of I know you just dropped a research paper on adaptive hiring. Could you give us your definition? What is it?
Sure. Adaptive hiring is just simply the new shift of way of how we think about recruiting and tech talent. It's really moving away from the traditional location-based hiring and embracing the more flexible, skills-focused approach and tapping into the global talent pools that can augment and complement all of your tech teams.
It's interesting. I think it was yesterday or the day before, the lead story in Forbes was around this push towards skill-based hiring. So I know this is like a dynamic that's getting a lot of time and attention. What do you think, Alicia, if we could start, what do you think is driving this shift, both geo-focus or skills-based, but this shift towards adaptive hiring? What do you think are the business drivers behind it?
Yeah, I think we're in an unprecedented time, right? There's a huge demand for tech talent. It's outplacing those tech hubs that they started with, and supply and demand at this point, right? The second part is remote work. We have proven that we can work and get good people and work from anywhere. And so I think that has really set the pace. And also the technology, it's just changing the prioritization of the adaptability and people wanting to be continuously learning and upskilling themselves over their static skill set that they come with.
Mm. I'm glad that you touched on demand, because one of the things that I hear out in the field and out in market, I'm actually in Dallas, lovely hotel background right now, Staffing Industry Association and their gig economy conference. One of the things that we hear sometimes is that, well, there must be plenty of supply because, we just had all those tech layoffs, like a wave of tech layoffs last year. And I guess I would want to go on record and just say a couple points there. First is that even with those tech layoffs, unemployment in the tech sector is still really low. The last data, I think in July, was like 3.2%, so well behind general unemployment. The data that I have seen published, like Korn Ferry put out a study that said the demand for technology talent, there would be a deficit of 4 million workers by the year 2030. And that report is a little older, but the CompTIA, Computer Technology Industry Association, put out fresh data just this summer, and their projection was that it would be 7.1 million workers, tech jobs, shortage by 2034.
Crazy, isn't it? Those numbers are astronomical and absolutely true. I would say those trends are definitely where we're seeing a huge deficit. We're just not going to have as many people doing as many jobs, and we're going to need to have some help.
Well, and I would just say, and doesn't it stand to reason that one of the tenets of this model is that in order to satisfy that demand, you have to widen your aperture, right? You have to be able to look beyond your own borders, so to speak, if you're going to satisfy this demand.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other studies that I wanted to chat to you about today was about how organizations are needing help, period. And they're relying on AI and their applicant tracking systems to help them. So IDC did a study not too long ago where we surveyed organizations and we asked them, how are they using AI in the recruitment process? And are they using it? And 51% said that they are using it, but 34% said that they're actually planning to implement it because they need help. And they are losing their recruiters and along with their associates. So they're needing to rely on something to help them towards finding these people and these skills that we're going to be in such a deficit for going forward.
Yeah. And then I think there's also, we should come back and I think dig in a little bit more on AI in a minute. But before we do, staying on the demand, one of the other things that you talked about driving this shift towards adaptive hiring was this understanding about remote work
Right.
and like how that was influencing I guess people's willingness to embrace this way of working. And I know you have some pretty recent anecdotes from in the field about what are you hearing about this, remote or return to office sort of dynamic and how that's impacting this approach?
For sure. Well, I think everybody is familiar with Dell, and they put out a return to work policy that basically staggeringly said 3 days a week, even though they spread it out on a different formula, and said that no matter who or what or where you are, you will need to return to an office. And I think that they thought that everybody would just abide. Most of the technology people responded negatively and said, no, thank you. And they also were kind of threatening around there wouldn't be any promotions and there wouldn't be any recognition. So those people did not return back to the office. And so this is a different precedence than we've ever had. And the people actually was the staggering amount was about half of those people did not return. And Dell was surprised, as well as so were all the studies that said it really is the work-life balance along with the ability to do good work wherever you are. So interesting statistics like that are coming forward.
Yeah, and I mean, what's interesting is we've been doing this hiring and offshoring for a long time. This is
Right.
this is not a new process or approach, I guess I should say. I think our view, though, is that there are technology platforms now that are making it possible for you to do this kind of at speed and at scale. and things like a talent cloud actually make this possible. Do
Yeah.
you think there are many people, are they adopting this approach then? Do you see it getting traction?
Especially in IT, I think that's another part where the borderless approach has been out there, but it hasn't necessarily been accepted across all verticals. But we've offshored for a number of years. We've always done that. And now I think the rise of the technology and the changes that are happening, the adaptive hiring is definitely the new way because the marketplaces are just not supplying them with enough of the right people with the right skills to do the jobs that they all need.
Yeah. This takes me back to what you said about, using AI, in the technology is now there to make it possible. It actually
Right.
triggers for me, one of our, accounts is GitHub, obviously very well known, especially with the
Yeah.
boom of Copilot. And I really love, I mean, they were always a remote first company. And if I think about, one of their senior executives said it really well, which is Andela makes the world our hiring pool. And they actually just flat out said, listen, if we don't take this approach, our time to hire, our ability to meet the demand, because obviously business has been booming, we're going to be obviated. And that solving that is simply not possible on the back of people alone. Right?
No.
It isn't, if you're going to identify right person for the right role at the right speed, at the right cost, you need technology, and specifically AI driven technology, to make that, to make that work. Right.
Absolutely. And also the well-being of your recruiters. I think that's the other part is that you're trying to solve for saving them as well, because there's a lot more demand on their desk, and they're asking for tools and solutions that can help them accommodate all of these numbers. Like I mentioned before, the 51% say they're using it, but it's still not enough. And that's really where they're needing help across finding best ways and new ways of embracing the AI.
I love that point. Our data, our research shows that, when you are using technology or approaches like Andela, you can save 106 hours per hire. It's pretty astounding, right? Just by augmenting what was a traditionally human process, and by applying AI and technology to do it. So beyond the fact that the technology is there to make it easier to do this, what are some other business reasons that you would, why else would an organization want to embrace an adaptive hiring model? And maybe also why now, do you think, Alicia?
Yeah, I think, of course, the business reasons is the work must go on, right? So we have to have the ability to continue to go, and the business still needs to make money. And getting those people in their seats quickly, adapted to the culture and the community, and doing their job and actually feeling like they're contributing is the most important part right now. And as soon as they feel like they fit into this world, that is an amazing productivity enhancer for them to actually say, this is a great place. First of all, thank you for having me. And third of all, we've got them in and productive right away. So it's really, really important.
What do we say? The work must go on, right? It doesn't,
Right.
it doesn't stop. One of the things I love about the adaptive model is that it is saying, hey, listen, projects are going to come and go, things are going to change, priorities are going to change. How amazing is it that you have an agile, flexible workforce that you can dial up or down on demand, or flex and shift based on changing business priorities? I'm going to pause that for just a sec, because we have a question from the audience that I want to get in on, want to get to. So we talked about, one of the key tenets is remove geography as a constraint, that you're thinking about right role, right talent, quality, skilled talent for the role. And one of our viewers wants to know, what regions do we think people should be looking at for talent? What's your POV?
Yeah, borderless, the globe. anywhere, any place you can find the people and the skills, because it's right now the ability to work everywhere and remote is proving to have the quality of work. So even if companies like such as Dell that think that the work and the knowledge isn't there, the trends are showing that it is, and the work is getting done not only well, but extraordinarily well. So to me, it's an open world. I feel like I should put my hands out and be like, it's the whole world at your fingertips.
Throw a dart at a map.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think we agree with that. As I mentioned, our marketplace covers 135 countries currently. Our view would be where we see demand and traction is in those emerging markets like Africa and Latin America. And I'll just tell you, one of the selling points is because with the US, there's really wonderful time zone overlap. So there's kind of two moments of customer delight that seem to happen. One is, wow, there's really talented and amazing individuals. And I guess, it's just like, it is a moment of delight when they realize, wow, I guess it exceeds my expectations of what was possible, part one. And then part two, the idea that, as you said, the offshoring model is not new, but it often comes with like really onerous time zone overlap or lack of overlap. You're doing calls in the wee hours, or either the team is or you are as the manager. And so the idea that you could log into a system, put in your JD, put in the skills that you require and say, you know what, I want a 5-hour time zone overlap, and be able to get a curated list of candidates based on hours of working overlap, that's pretty compelling. So
Absolutely.
again, that would be Andela's perspective. And of course it lines up with the way that our marketplace is designed. But I think that would be our POV. I love what you're saying. The whole point is be borderless. But I think that the just time zone overlap is a factor that I would be looking at.
Yeah, I want to chime in here real quick too. I think some of the interesting facts that I've seen is when we lay down those borders and we open our arms up to the education levels, the median of the age groups, and the locations, like you said, oftentimes they are all pluses. For example, the median age in I believe it is in Africa and Latin America is about 20 years old. So those are individuals that are coming out of college and they're highly educated. They are specifying in multiple languages, which is a huge advantage. And they also are accommodating and getting degrees, right? So they're not only people that can accommodate us and help and enhance us, also on our time zone sometimes, depending on what they choose to work and how they choose to work. But that helps be agnostic across the board, and it allows them to also embrace and allow to work in a culture that maybe is different than their own. So I love all of those points, and I'm definitely thinking that we just have to open our eyes and open our vision and strategy to find more people in unique different places that maybe we haven't thought of before.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So one of the things I just mentioned, the Forbes article yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and you definitely see it. I see it in the analyst research that I see, business articles. It was interesting to me to see it hit the business press with Forbes. But there definitely is this push towards skills-based hiring. And in some cases, they mean I'm de-emphasizing college degrees. In some cases, they really just mean right skills over JDs. I mean, it means a lot of different things, but there's definitely this push in the industry towards a skills-based approach. Could you riff or maybe educate the audience, Alicia? What do you think is driving that rise, and how does that impact like an adaptive hiring approach?
Yeah, I think that the adaptive approach is really to find the best person that is willing to learn and be accommodating and also have some core values and culture, education. All of those things come together as the person is actually onboarded into the organization. So I think what's really important is to take a look at, maybe you're looking for a coder in this particular case, maybe in the tech industry, and you were finding maybe they weren't there. That doesn't mean that they're not capable of learning it. Or in certain cases where they did go to an educated college or accredited college and they got a degree and they changed their mind. They really didn't like it anymore. Those are still transferable skills that they accomplished, that they have learned over, regardless of what kind of position it was. And so those are the people skills that they were looking for. In addition to that, some of those hard skills or those accreditations that they actually learned are half-time skills that are shorter time than ever because of technology. So it allows them, they need to keep up on their credentials, but they also need to be able to learn and adapt as they go forward. So the continuous learning part never ends. And platforms where they can isolate the skills, but then also see a trend where they're improving and willing to be coached and to add on additional ones is only proving to be more strength within the teams and more strength in the value that they're bringing to the organization.
One thing that also strikes me is that this is another way, like the talent cloud and technology can really impact skills-based hiring, because one of the things you would need to do, or we believe is, well, let me back up. This is why Andela incorporated developer assessment into the technology platform, so that you can literally verify that you are hiring indeed for the skills that you need. You can test on, theoretical knowledge, practical knowledge, code tests, video playback of code tests to ensure there's, nothing hinky, let's look a professional word there, nothing funny happening. But all of that makes it possible for a hiring manager to validate that the candidates have the technical skills that they need.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things too, Kelly, is that it does a benchmark, right? Where did this person or this candidate start with us sometimes? And if we are to do an additional assessment, where do we know that they might need to go? And what is maybe something that we could introduce to them and build upon, so you can show the delta of where they're actually been, where they are now, and where they're going, which is a beautiful progression, not only on performance, but for the people and for the organization. So that's amazing that you're doing that.
Well, I will say too, one of the use cases, the technology that we integrated into Andela Talent Cloud was based on Qualified.io. That's a company that we acquired last year. But their standalone use case is you can go in and use those developer assessments to actually benchmark a team and identify where do you have skill gaps and where do we need, and what kind of L&D training might we need to deploy to, rise the tide, so to speak, of that organization. I just want to pause a minute because we see a question in the chat that is skill related, which is, do we see that the country where the developer is located affects salary even when hard and soft skills are equal? I'm happy to toss it to you, but I will tell you from an Andela perspective, yes, it does matter. And we run, because we're running a marketplace, we can pull a marketplace liquidity report, and often do, to tell you, which skills are the most in demand. And obviously, supply and demand works. The more in demand your skill, the more a premium you're able to charge. So like, ML, data science, data engineering, these are roles that we see, salaries are climbing, even in cloud and DevOps also. But you can actually see a differential. I would look at it even by continent is sometimes how we talk about it. What are those, a same QA engineer, for example, what does that cost on the continent of Africa, in India, in Latin America? And yes, you will see differentials by region. And I believe that's to be expected.
Absolutely. And I will just reiterate with you on that. Part of my career has been in payroll. And so for me to hear the word pay transparency, shame on you if you're not shopping, around, because now there's a reason there's a gap in pay transparency, and locations. Cost of living is different. Education is different. Valuable resources across the board, not just people, but contributing factors to all of that. And I think that's super important for how large a project is and what the scope is and the timeframes, because back to the business key initiatives, those all have to be in line in order for it to be beneficial for all, not just the employees, but for the companies.
Yeah, I'm just doing a quick time check. And by the way, thank you for the questions. You can keep them coming. If we don't get to them live on air, because we're down to like 4 minutes and counting now, we can always reply to you offline. So please don't let that stop you. I guess I had a bunch of questions that I'm not going to get to. So let's maybe jump to what advice would you give to an organization that is thinking about embracing this adaptive hiring approach? What would you say?
Yeah, this isn't just a trend. Like, this is the future of work. And I think that the biggest focus is I would lean into it, because the companies that are more comfortable with how these teams are being evaluated and what you should be evaluating on the skills is definitely is beyond just the technology. It's about the information that you're going to be collecting. And it's definitely an exciting time where we're marrying the people, the technology, and the value for the organizations, and that we're getting it be able to attract top talent across the world. So my advice was do it now and do it the right way, and start small, stick your toes in, but then embrace the results, and you will be on the top of your talent game.
Yeah, I love that. Like, start small, but like think big. And I mean, I can tell you, I 100% agree with the way you frame that. Like, this is the future of work. I do not believe this is a trend that is going anywhere. The business benefits in terms of speed to hire, time savings for your recruiting and staffing team, project delivery timelines accelerated so significantly by your ability to get the right talent in the right seat, on time and get working, are just, too compelling, I think, to ignore. If we look at like case studies that we've seen, I would say another thing to a company that's thinking about getting started, which is realize that there are many ways you could start. For example, if you have we were in conversation with a company just the other day, and they were looking at, okay, we're trying to get our talent strategy for 2025. And the whole conversation was 2025. And after we were showing them the platform and how it works and how you go in and look at time zone overlap, they're like, wait a minute, we need cloud and DevOps people right now. And
today,
like,
yeah.
Why don't you just start with 1 or 2 headcount? Like, you can absolutely start small, 1 or 2 roles, whether you're trying to fill for capacity or fill a specific skill gap, you can do that. Whether or not you want to spin up an entire team, you could do that. Or you want to say, no, you know what? I don't want to take on the risk. You take on the risk. I have an SOW. I have a deliverable. I want you to do that. You could start that way too. So I think that like actually gives, you talked about dipping your toe in the water. I think those 3 different approaches give an enterprise or a company multiple different paths down to the water to get to dip the toes in and get started.
Yeah, and then they find out the water is warm. That's amazing. Yes, absolutely. Take the dive into the water and make it happen. Kelly, it was so
Alicia,
much fun today. Thank you. We could talk about this for hours, couldn't we?
I know. Well, it's like such a passion for you. I know you've spent your entire career in this space. So the white paper is amazing. I encourage you all to download and take a read. I promise you will learn something from it. Alicia, it's been a real pleasure having the dialogue with you and getting to dive in. We'll keep the pun going on the topic. So thank you so much. And thank you for everybody for joining around the world. As always, great to see you. Everybody go make it a great rest of your day. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.